Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're embarking on a journey that's honestly going to change the way you view everyday language. I mean, we interact with words constantly, right? Speaking, texting, reading, writing, but we rarely hit pause to look at the actual mechanics of how we're doing it. By the end of this, you're going to have a powerful new tool in your tool belt for uncovering the hidden patterns in how we all communicate. So think about this for a second. Do you know the real difference between how language should be used and how it actually is used? We all grew up with grammar teachers telling us exactly what's correct and what's incorrect. We were handed these strict rules. But if you pay close attention to how you and your friends actually speak, or how people write on social media, or even how dialogue flows in your favorite movies, well, you'll start to notice something pretty quickly. Actual human behavior rarely plays by those strict textbook rules 100% of the time. Which brings us to Section 1, Rules versus Reality. Okay, let's dive into this major philosophical divide in the world of linguistics. See, our goal today isn't to become the grammar police. Not at all. Instead, our goal is to understand how language is truly spoken and written out there in the wild. We're stepping out of that rigid classroom mindset and stepping right into the shoes of a linguistic observer. On the left side of things, we have prescriptive grammar. Think of this as your traditional rule book. It prescribes exactly how language should be used. But on the right, we have descriptive grammar. This is the actual scientific observation of how language is used by living, breathing people. And as future educators, language professionals, or, just informed language users, it's absolutely crucial to understand both. But for our purposes today, we're putting on our scientist hats and taking that descriptive approach to discover the real patterns for ourselves. And that leads us to Section 2, Introducing SKELL. Now, to do this descriptive observation effectively, we can't just rely on our own personal experience, right? We need a tool that gathers millions of words and lets us examine them up close. We literally need a magnifying glass for uncovering these real-world linguistic patterns. So say hello to SKELL. This stands for Sketch Engine for Language Learning. It's a completely free online tool, and its absolute superpower is allowing us to explore authentic examples of English from real-world texts. Contrast this with those stiff, made-up examples you usually find in textbooks. The ones, John has one red apple. Nobody actually talks like that. SKELL completely bypasses the artificial stuff and pulls straight from authentic contexts like news articles, blogs, and real speech. It shows us the reality of the language. And honestly, using SKELL is incredibly simple. You don't need to download any complex software or anything like that. You just open your web browser, navigate to the SKELL homepage, and boom, you're immediately greeted with a search box. From there, it's just a matter of typing in a word or phrase that you want to investigate. It is basically the ultimate search and discover platform. But wait, before we run a search, I want to draw your attention to a very specific, absolutely crucial metric you'll see at the top of the SKELL results page: 1 million. You're going to see a stat calculated against this exact number, and it is the key to making sense of all the data SKELL gives you. That metric is called hits per million. See, instead of just telling you a word appeared, say 50,000 times in their massive database, which is kind of hard to wrap your head around, Skills standardizes the data. It tells you exactly how many times that word appears for every 1 million words of text. This number acts as our ultimate compass. It instantly gives us a really reliable general idea of how frequently society actually uses a specific word or expression. So when SKELL spits out a list of authentic examples, I want you to ask yourself a few specific questions to kind of build your analytical framework. First off, is this word or phrase very common, based on those hits per million? Where is it used? Does the context feel formal or more informal? What patterns exist in the surrounding words? And finally, the big one, does this real language use actually match our traditional grammar expectations? Keep these burning questions in your mind because we are about to put them to the test. All right, Section 3, the who versus whom test. Let's treat this like an investigative mystery, okay? We're going to look at a classic grammar debate that pretty much everyone has struggled with at some point. Yep, we're putting who and whom under the microscope. Traditional rules have really strict guidelines about when to use which. But what does the reality of the data say? Well, when we run these words through SKELL, look at the left side. Searching who makes the results absolutely explode. We see a massive number of examples and a super high frequency count in the hits per million. People use who constantly, in almost every context. But look over at the right side. When we search whom, the story changes completely. There are far fewer examples, and the contexts where it does appear are distinctly more formal. And this brilliantly illustrates something else. SKELL reveals a very specific behavioral pattern for whom. As we scan the authentic examples, we notice that whom almost always clings to prepositions. You'll see to whom, for whom, and by whom. This is a massive revelation. It shows us that while traditional grammar might demand whom in any object position, real language users have largely abandoned that, reserving it almost exclusively for these formal, prepositional phrases. We literally just use descriptive linguistics to solve the mystery. How cool is that?
Moving on to Section 4, your Corpus Corner mission.
Now it's your turn to take the wheel. We're transitioning into the direct application phase of this explainer, where you step into the role of a linguistic researcher and really empower yourself as an informed language user. But listen, the crucial point here is this. Please do not be intimidated. The goal of this activity is not to become some highly technical corpus linguist. No way. You don't need to perform complicated statistical analyses or write a giant dissertation. The sole goal here is to simply become a more careful, thoughtful observer of language. You're really just looking at evidence and taking notes. That's the whole shebang. So, to ensure you know exactly what to do, here are the 6 precise steps for your Corpus Corner activity. First, choose one language feature you're curious about, maybe a slang word or another confusing grammar pair. Second, type it right into the SKELL search box. Third, immediately review that frequency per million words metric to see just how common it is. Fourth, you don't need to read every single sentence, just examine several examples to get a feel for the context. Fifth, notice the patterns in usage, like what words like to live next to your search term. And finally, step 6, synthesize your findings by writing a short reflection based on your observations. Now, as you write that reflection, I want you to burn this quote into your memory. Remember, there is no single correct answer. Seriously, let that relieve any lingering anxiety you might have about those rigid grammar rules. The beauty of the descriptive philosophy is that human expression is vast, evolving, and honestly beautifully messy. You're observing reality here, not taking a multiple-choice test. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to guide your exploration. As you boot up SKELL and start typing in words, I want you to constantly ask yourself, how does communication really work in the real world? Think like a linguist, challenge your assumptions, look at the raw data. The answers you find might just surprise you. Have fun, happy exploring, and I'll catch you next time.